Welcome, students of Form 3. This is my second video I made for the test for the end of January. And like I said before, one, it's important that you know what the answer should be, of course. But second, and that's even more important, I think, is that you get an idea and an approach in how long does your answer need to be and which quality does it have to have, like a certain academic quality you need to work to. Yeah, and the question is describe in depth how the slave trade changed the relationships between the rulers and the ruled in Africa by using the four words chief, chieftainship, way stations, and caravan routes. Perhaps you see that I made these words blue, and that means that look them up in the dictionary, read what they are about, so you are able to use these words in an answer. Because if you don't know what they mean, you're just writing down what you learned by heart for the cabez, and it's no use. Really try to approach these words like what do they mean? How can I use them in an answer? Why are they important for the slave trade and for Africa? Yeah? Let's look at the question some more. Between the rulers and the ruled in Africa. What does that mean? Yeah? Okay. In Africa, there were chieftainships. We're going to talk about those more, but first we need to look at the map. Okay. In Africa, there were chieftainships. Those were like kingdoms or small pieces of land that were constantly changing, and they had a ruler, a chief, even a king, if you will, but chief is the most common used word. One of those examples is the Dahomey. Also in Ghana, you have another kingdom, I won't name that, but it was called Ashanti, I will name it. But the Dahomey is also very famous. Okay. And you had the rulers and the ruled. The rulers were the chiefs, yeah, often it was a man, and the ruled were their people. It wasn't a democracy. The ruler was the boss. Yeah? Sometimes it was a queen, yeah, but often it was a chief. Yeah? And the ruled were the people who had to listen to the chief. Sometimes the chieftainship was big, sometimes smaller. Yeah? But often smaller than the countries that we know now. Yeah? Okay. We're going to look at the answer between the rulers and the ruled. The slave trade changed the relationships between the rulers and the ruled in Africa significantly. Significantly means it was a lot. Yeah, there's always change, but this was a big change. And a majority, the most of the groups in Africa were chieftainships. The leaders were chiefs or even kings in some instances. The larger the area the chief governed, the more powerful he or sometimes she was. During the 17th century, the slave trade grew because the Europeans came in, they came in more and more from Portugal, from Spain, from France, the Dutch came, and this created caravan routes. Caravan route, these routes together formed a network of slave merchants. The villages, rather small settlements of the chiefs in Africa, became way stations and became bigger and bigger. This development changed the relationship between the rulers and the ruled because the chiefs became incredibly rich because of the way stations and because of the growth of the slave trade. They began to wage wars between each other to gain slaves and became tyrants who ruled their people by fear. So this isn't a positive change, actually. It isn't a positive change in the relationship between ruler and ruled. Of course, it didn't happen everywhere. Africa is big, but especially in West Africa, in the Dahomey, in the Kingdom of Ashanti, this was a tendency of a ruler that didn't wage war just because he was at a disagreement with his neighbor, but one of the prime main goals of war became to get more slaves and make more money, more profit because of the slave trade with the Europeans. Okay, looking at it in a different way, I made this. Yeah, how did the relationship change between the rulers and the ruled? There were chieftainships in Africa, and there was a growth of the European slave trade. When? During the 17th century, between 1600 and 1700. Because of this, the caravan routes grew in number and in size. Small settlements become rich way stations, yeah, and these are developments, desarrollan in Africa during the 17th century, between 1600 and 1700. And this all leads to chiefs waging more wars just to obtain more slaves, and often they rule by fear and they become a tyrant. Yeah, so they oppress their people, they use force to hold power over their people because they have become very rich of the slave trade with the Europeans. And these are changing relationships between the rulers and the ruled in Africa. Yeah. This is another way of explaining the answer of my question, and it shows how the one led to the other. Yeah, the chieftainships, growth of the European slave trade, the caravan routes grow in number and size. These small settlements become bigger and bigger and richer. And this makes the chiefs become tyrants ruled by fear and oppression. Not always, but this is a tendency in West Africa. Yeah. And these are the changing relationships between the rulers and the ruled in Africa. Well, this was the end of my video. I hope it was informative. I hope you learned from it. One, you learned the answer. And two, you learned also the quality and the academic depth that your answer needs to have to earn a very high point of the test that is coming up the end of this month.